the Santa Clara. Oh, there we go. Now it's recording. So we're here tonight with some candidates for 3 seats on the city council, including mayor. We've got District 6 council member Anthony Becker, who's running for mayor. We've got District 2 council member Raj Chahal, who is running for re-election in his district. And we've got District 3 council member Karen Hardy, who is running for re-election against her challenger, Christian Palekia, who's also here today. We're going to be starting with our mayoral candidate, Anthony Becker, followed by District 2 at 6:45 p.m. And then we'll hear from our candidates for the District 3 race at 7:30 p.m. We should note, we did make numerous attempts to invite incumbent Mayor Lisa Gilmore to tonight's forum, but she did not respond. We also did not hear back from candidate Larry McCulloch, who is challenging Councilmember Chahal in District 2. So we'll all just be doing one-on-ones with those candidates. Besides the one-on-ones with those candidates tonight, we'll be doing back and forth. Each candidate will get a minute to answer each question, and we'll also get 3 rebuttals per person. This is really going to apply more to the District 3 race at 7:30. We'll ask some pre-submitted audience questions if there's time, and we're also accepting questions in the chat or the QA box, one of those. So if you have questions, audience members, please send those in and we'll get right to those. Well, let's jump right in. Let's get to the mayoral race. Our candidate here is Councilmember Anthony Becker. Councilmember, are you there?
There we go.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. Glad to be here.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. So, welcome. First, let's start with an opening statement. You have 2 minutes to just make your opening remarks.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me and thank you for hosting this. Santa Clara, we're basically at a crossroads. We have a really major chance to basically get our city back on the right track. You know, everyone says times are tough, but this is only going to make us tougher. And basically, I need help from you, the community, and friends, family, everybody in this community to basically get us to build a better future. This race is also about the heart and soul of our city. Here's a snapshot of my accomplishments since I've been on the city council, since I've been elected. I ended the costly CVRA lawsuit that brought you, basically my opponent, Mayor Gilmore, lost $6 million on, fighting voting rights and diversity. I brought the 2026 FIFA World Cup to the city of Santa Clara, implemented the homeless task force, passed an aggressive climate action plan, refunded our public safety, navigated the major aftereffects of the pandemic, and lifted the music ban that has basically led to a record amount of concerts at our stadium. And that's money that goes into our funds. On the other hand, my priorities as mayor, I have an ambitious plan called the Santa Clara New Deal, which is building the affordable housing for seniors, families, and young people. I can relate because it's so costly out there. Rebuilding our Santa Clara's downtown, reducing our city's $27 million in deficits that my opponent has gotten us into, housing the homeless, and generating new revenues. These are all things that basically my opponent has failed for the last 6 years. Failed governments, failed policy. And basically what I'm here is to basically bring fresh new leadership that can orchestrate the change that Santa Clara needs. I am the only candidate running for mayor that is endorsed by the majority of the city council. Santa Clara is basically still a place of promise. Santa Clara is still the center of what's possible. And the possibilities are endless when our city is focused on the quality of life things that matter. So I want you to be a part of what's possible. Join Team Becker and help me provide a thriving Santa Clara for all, because honestly, folks, this is the turning point. You either get 4 more years of Lisa Gilmore, and we cannot afford that. It is time to put our foot forward and in the future and a new generation to lead our city. So I ask for your support. All right, there you go.
There you go, tight 2 minutes. Let's get into these questions now. Councilman Becker, if you win the mayor's race and you can only do one thing in your first 100 days in office, what is it?
Well, the first thing I would actually take my hand at is actually dividing the power on the city council. Currently, I think the power that the mayor has is abusive. I think there's a lot of times where myself and other council members are left out in the cold. Sometimes we don't know about things that are going on. There's proclamations that are done without our knowledge, and even letters being written to the governor and asking for breaks for their campaign contributors. That is a major concern to me. And I think right now we need to divide things up on our city council by giving more power to council members that are district representatives. That is my first thing that I will be doing by spreading the power, spreading the wealth on our council, because I believe we have council members that are up to the task and they need that representation. And I think that should be fair to do that.
Thank you for that. Next question. On the campaign trail, you called out Mayor Gilmore for ballooning city deficit and promising to get this. Sorry, let me rephrase this. On the campaign trail, you called out Mayor Gilmore for the ballooning city deficit and you promised to get the city's finances back on track. How specifically would you do that?
So first, we got to get things under control. One, we were under nothing but wasteful spending that got us into this $27 million deficit. We are very, very top heavy in our city salaries, which is another issue I think that my opponent has basically brought to the city of Santa Clara. How we solve it is we start getting revenue from our stadium. Yeah, it's peanuts, but it's enough peanuts that are going to get us into a position that we can. There's Measure H that's out there right now, which is basically the business license tax. That's going to help us get at least $6 to $7 million there. There's also the cannabis tax that was passed back in 2018. And I think we take a look at that as way of manufacturing or even grow house operations, because we have the best power company in the area. That's another $6 to $10 million that we can make off of that. And it's endless because I'm focused on making more revenue, which includes rebuilding our tourism district. My opponent in 2018 destroyed our Chamber of Commerce as well as the tourism industry. And by doing that, I think it's a major issue because it's suffering. The area that near our stadium has suffered. And I think that's why Great America is probably going to try to be leaving, is because we have not focused on making sure that we make the proper amount of TOT. And if you look at the number of TOT revenue we've had, it's nothing compared to what we've had before Mayor Gilmore took control. So it's all about basically chipping away at this deficit, little by little, being a little more tightening on the belt, but focusing on finding every revenue source we can. I know that just recently that there was the CHIPS bill that was done by, I believe it was President Biden. And I think that's a major, major factor that we can probably do. I want to get some, if I'm mayor, I want to get some of that CHIPS money because that will help our community and also help create jobs. So that is kind of my plan of reducing the deficits, and not to mention a faster approval process on projects like affordable housing projects. That gets more money to our general fund quicker. So we got to streamline the process on that too. So those are kind of my, in a nutshell, of how I want to reduce our deficits.
You talked about wasteful spending in the past. Can you provide some examples of this wasteful spending that you would eliminate?
First, the biggest wasteful spending, I think, is litigation. My opponent goes out there and often says that, oh, Councilmember Becker and the rest of the city council gives sweetheart deals to the 49ers. Well, that's wrong. The mayor actually gave sweetheart deals to the 49ers 10 years ago. She gave sweetheart deals to the developer related, who has paid $0 to our city. At the same time, she continued to spend litigation trying to fight the 49ers. That was going to cost us $13 million in the long run. And I thought Santa Clarans don't deserve to lose money on litigation. She gives sweetheart deals to litigators, to attorneys. And I think that's not fair, because it also goes back to another wasteful spending moment of my opponent, which was the CVRA lawsuit. My opponent spent $6 million fighting voting rights, fighting diversity on our city council orders, and trying to fight change on the city council because she wanted to retain control. So far, she has lost $27 million to our city. That's our deficit right now. The $6 million was the biggest wasteful spending she has made. We can't afford 4 more years of Lisa Gilmore. We can't afford to get into the future with further deficits, and we need to get things under control.
Oh, sorry, I muted. I did not mean to be muted. Spotlight crew, I think we have people in the panel that should not be here, just FYI. Council member, let's move on. So you touted yourself as an affordable housing advocate and your record of building more low-income housing. But the city council last month actually voted to postpone a 106-unit affordable housing project on, I believe, Civic Center Drive. And it's also lagging behind on its affordable housing goals. The city is. What steps will you take to increase the city's low-income housing stock if elected mayor?
The project that just recently came before us, which is Charities Housing, I did not object to it. I didn't vote against it. I just decided that because of a due process issue of residents that had put a petition forward before the affordable housing project, we should just abide by the due process issue. Our staff, at the time, let this fall between the cracks, and I think it was an appropriate way of giving them due process at the same time of giving the developer the same fair treatment. Going forward on affordable housing, I will be a champion for affordable housing. Where I live right here, this is $2,800 a month. That's almost unsustainable for a lot of people. I work 2 jobs. I have a day job. I also have a council member job. The role of council and mayor are part-time. Yet it seems that we keep having an issue where it's getting harder and harder to get affordable housing. For example, I know people that I work with that are driving in from Yosemite, that are camping in motorhomes during the week. I know people that are driving who work at McDonald's in Santa Clara, and they live in the city of Gilroy because maybe that $4 extra an hour might buy their kid some jackets or something. Sorry about that. I hear something.
Yeah, sorry, just a sec, council member. Something's happening where people are being added as panelists instead of attendees. Spotlight crew, please help me fix this. I'm trying to get everybody in as attendees.
There we go.
Awesome. Sorry about that, council member. Continue.
No, don't worry about that. And so it comes down to, basically preventing homelessness in this process too. It's about building the affordable housing as soon as we can. And that's why I believe that if I'm elected mayor, my opponent has not been strong on affordable housing. She's never even addressed homeless issues. In fact, she takes credit for things that we've actually done in the last 2 years. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the affordable housing in regions that we can afford it, which is in the north side, El Camino corridor, which is, basically transportation corridor. And looking at old motels along the El Camino Real that we can turn into transitional housing for homeless people, because it's more about homeless families. When I see over on Bassett in the north side, and I see a woman have 2 kids living inside of a motorhome with her, I'm like, this is not the quality of life that Santa Clarans deserve, nor anybody in our community deserves. So my solution is fast tracking affordable housing projects. And it's unfortunate that just recently the Charities Project had to go through that process of that little tiny delay because of due process issue. But we apologize for that, and we will be voting on it soon. I'm a major advocate of that affordable housing because as a millennial, it's harder and harder for us to survive here. There's no housing for us to buy. Half of my friends that I grew up with are gone. And it's about actually building places that people can afford. Where is your Starbucks worker going to live? Where is your grocery store clerk going to live? And I'm the mayor that's going to champion that, because as a millennial, it's time that we have that kind of representation.
Thank you for that. And sorry again for the disruption.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So I think you've laid this out pretty clear, but I think we can maybe hone in on this a little bit. This next question is, how do your ideas and philosophies differ from Mayor Gilmore's in terms of specific examples you can provide?
Sorry, you were breaking up.
Oh, did I cut out? Let me repeat that. So yeah, the question was, how do your ideas and philosophies differ from Mayor Gilmore's? And if you could provide specific examples of those.
Sure, yeah. Different philosophies, and basically, well, first off, I don't waste the taxpayers' money. I don't waste taxpayers' money on petty lawsuits or frivolous lawsuits. I really don't waste our taxpayers' money on personal vendettas. I also don't go and abuse the legal system by getting a grand jury to come out and say basically that 5 council members have done wrongdoing. I have ethics, I have transparency, and my opponent has had a long history of, I feel, corruption and misinformation and basically lying to the people. Recent issues that we differed on was the CVRA lawsuit. My opponent actually said that she would double down and she would actually vote for the CVRA lawsuit again. She would actually support going twice. Actually, when the lawsuit was finished, she appealed it. And then after the appeal was over, she wanted to continue to go to the next court level. And I think that right there is inappropriate. I think that is wasting taxpayer money based on their own personal vendettas. At the same time, there's a personal vendetta against the 49ers. And, the 49ers are a business partner in the city of Santa Clara. She may say that I'm an allegiance of them, but, we have to have a working relationship with the 49ers because honestly, it's a 40-year marriage, which we're now in year 30-something. And frankly, she had created a very toxic relationship between the 49ers and the city. And it's about time that we start repairing that relationship, hold the 49ers accountable, hold our community and making sure that our community is getting what it is owed, and especially the promises of Measure J. So there's a lot of differences between me and my opponent, especially when it comes to transparency and ethics. I'm going to tell you how it is. I'm going to tell you the honest truth about it. And I'm going to tell you, if I can't do that, I'm going to be direct and blunt. But at the same time, my opponent feeds off of lies feeds off of misinformation. And that's something that I don't match with her on. And that's what is different between both her and I.
Thank you for breaking that down. Let's stick with the 49ers for a sec. The San Francisco 49ers have spent $1.5 million as of October 7th to oppose Gilmore and support you as the city's next mayor. I think there's some questions I know from residents that if you win, how can voters know that you'll vote independently of what the 49ers would want, given that they're contributing to your campaign?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm independent. The 49ers don't own me. And I think it's really kind of sad because we have turned this whole election into discussing everything about the 49ers. Everything has been discussions about the 49ers. In fact, it's taking away from actually talking about real big issues like affordable housing and homelessness and our $27 million deficit. It takes away from those things. And I think Mayor Gilmore feeds into that because it actually is deflecting from the fact of her failed leadership, failed governance, and her failed policies. And the 49ers are going to be there forever. You know, they're an entity that's going to be here. What they do in independent expenditures is beyond my control. What they spend in this election is beyond my control. Until the United States decides to overturn Citizens United, there's nothing that we can do. I can't do anything about anti-Anthony Becker ads. I can't do anything about any anti-Anthony Becker rhetoric. That's just the way the system is. But what I can do is I can try to make a better relationship with the 49ers. Looking at the independent expenditures, I'm not owned by them. I look over at my opponent and I think about what the related company is doing with her and how much they fund her is, you know, I have the same legitimate questions for her. You know, does that have an influence on your votes? Does that have an influence on what you do on the city council? And I think it doesn't have an influence on me from what the 49ers do. There's often times where I've been holding them accountable, especially with the recent ticket fee that I was a little concerned about, as well as some parking issues and, you know, other concerns like a neighborhood stadium committee that basically listens to the concerns of residents. So there's been a lot of pushback that I've gotten from the 49ers. And frankly, if I'm the next mayor of Santa Clara, I have 4 years. I have 4 years to prove to residents of Santa Clara that I represent them, because in the end, I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant that serves the interests of the Santa Clarans and all Santa Clarans.
Thank you for that. We're working on a story now that should actually be coming out in the morning about how you've been the subject of homophobic slurs and even death threats. What do you feel the city and its mayor should do to stop this hateful rhetoric and restore civility toward elected officials?
Sorry, you're breaking up on that last sentence right there.
I'm so sorry. I will read the whole thing over again. So we're working on a story that's coming out in the morning. It's about how you've been the subject of homophobic slurs and even death threats. So I'm curious, what should the city and its mayor do to stop that hateful rhetoric and restore civility towards elected officials?
Absolutely. It's disturbing. I mean, we're in the year 2022. You think that this would be over, but it's not. Actually, my opponent continues to support a blog called Santa Clara News, written by Robert Haw. On the blog, it is nothing but a safe space for hate, bigotry, and homophobia. I have seen comments on there that say things like recall the low-hanging fruit in quotation marks. I have seen comments that says there are too many brown people on the city council. I have seen comments from a commissioner who is actually trying to start a recall campaign right now that says things like the easiest way to recall a council member is like loading a gun, aim, point, and shoot. I have turned those things over to the police chief, yet nothing was done by the police chief because the police chief is supporting my opponent. At the same time is supporting Burt Field, who is doing this recall effort, which is not going to get off the ground, to be honest, because this is actually deflecting from the fact of my opponent's record. Again, my opponent has not denounced this blog. I have asked her to denounce this blog, saying, will you denounce this homophobic, hateful rhetoric that is being spoken on this place or even shared in our community? In fact, she laughed at me. She laughed at me at that council meeting. And then the next day she doubles down and shares his news story and says, this is why we need a diversity of news in our community. But I'm sorry, Mayor, we do not need hate in our community. And if I am the mayor of Santa Clara, I would call this out. I would call in the district attorney if I had to for these kind of issues, and getting death threats that include, if I voted on a 49ers issue, that they will do something and they will come and find me. That is disturbing to know. And that scares me. And it makes me scared for my council colleagues. And that the mayor allows this abusive behavior is just out of control. And it comes down to this, is because of all this hate. And they may say it's because, oh, it's what the 49ers want. They're siding with the 49ers. No, it's what Lisa Gilmore wants. Lisa Gilmore wants to control the city council. She wants to control votes. And how she will do that is spread homophobia, spread racism, and hate. Just look at her record. Look how many people she has supported and endorsed in the last 10 years. It is nothing but straight, white, rich candidates. And that right there tells me everything I need to know. And frankly, I think she has a little too many close ties to the Donald Trump crew, which is Stephen Ross of the Related Company. And I think that right there also explains it too. So yeah, homophobia is alive and well in the city of Santa Clara. I know somebody made a comment out there before that it's the Alabama of the Silicon Valley, which I do not want to see our city that way. In fact, I will champion everything I can for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our city, including we need to get a new mayor to stop this kind of rhetoric, because honestly, it's 2022 and we need to move on. And I think my council colleagues would agree with me on this.
What is one thing your opponent has claimed about you that you want to set the record straight on?
Well, let's see. You guys got about an hour. I got a lot of stuff to tell you guys. I mean, since I got on the city council, the first actual meeting, I get accused by a city attorney. I get accused by the mayor. I get accused by an outgoing council member, all that I'm in the pocket of the 49ers. This is a narrative that the mayor has been spreading for 2 years. This is a narrative that actually a lie that the mayor continues to spread every day, including through that hateful blog that she so dearly holds close to her heart. I think, right now we are in a really challenging position as council members because we are facing a mayor that really just doesn't agree with what's going on. And as I said before, it comes down to we should not be we should not be controlled by one person. The mayor is one vote, and the mayor should actually be treated as one equal vote as every council member. And to see that the abuse of this office has been done by the current mayor, I'm just hoping that we can change that rhetoric and we can get and move in a positive direction. But the 49er narrative is something that I've been having to deal with for 2 years. She has benefited from $5 million of Jed York's money in the past when she brought the stadium here. At the same time, she's benefited from Related, the POA, all these other special interests. And to see her basically try to accuse all of us of this over time, I mean, she even calls us the 49er 5, which is basically just a spin-off of another term called the Stadium 5 from 10 years ago, which she was a part of. So that has been basically the hardest thing to get rid of, and including going and saying inappropriate things that I've done in closed session, lying to the public about those things, as well as basically lying about the character. And even in the recent news reports that just came out, saying that we have taken gifts from the 49ers, that we have taken gifts from the World Cup dinner or something. I got receipts and I got proof. And it's really sad that someone like that continues to lie, especially the position and the power that they have. So I've had to deal with that for 2 years. And that is something that I wish Mayor Gilmore would stand up and say that she was wrong, because we're not in the pocket of the 49ers. We're an independent body. And just because the votes go against her, it's not her game. It's City of Santa Clara's game, not hers.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just a couple more questions here, and then we can get into the audience questions. I see one in the QA that we can get to in a few minutes. Audience members, listeners, viewers, just a reminder that we are accepting audience questions for a few minutes at the end of this. So if you want to submit those, please feel free to do so now. Councilmember, let's get to those other two questions. As mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure before I started. Okay, as mayor, how would you help the city's economy continue to recover from COVID-19 and compete with neighboring Bay Area cities for new commercial developments?
Sure. Yeah, well, that's a great question. As I mentioned just a little bit ago, there was the CHIPS Act that basically has been passed. There's some money out there that I think that I would go grab because we're a very competitive city. As our tagline is, we are the center of what's possible. And I think that's a great place for businesses, brand new or even existing businesses, to do business in our city. If I'm elected mayor, I think I'm going to be a champion of that because I'm going to be working with our businesses, actually having communication, collaboration, and what it's going to come down to is compromising too. And I think working with other cities as well and trying to find balance with this, I think that's going to be key as well, because I've been trying to repair a lot of our neighboring cities' relationships. But going forward, I think the biggest issue is making sure that we don't have businesses leave the city of Santa Clara, making sure that we continue to have good enterprise in the city of Santa Clara, and basically attracting every marketable on the map again, and that includes the tourism industry.
And final question from us here, going out on a bit of a light one. What's your favorite place in Santa Clara and why?
Boy, that's a good one. Well, my favorite place in Santa Clara was always as a kid, it was Henry Schmidt Park. It was the little train track, the little train that they used to have there. That's gone now. I'm a little sad, and I think I'm really trying to push our Parks Department to put something similar back in there, because it was such an iconic little park. That was my favorite place. But right now, I have to say, because I'm getting a little bit older, Central Park is my favorite place. It is the perfect opportunity that has shade, that has, a great blend of nature. Yeah, I know, and we're on that. We're trying to figure some things out. But Central Park is my favorite place. It is something that I think a lot of our, I don't want to call them founding fathers of Santa Clara, but basically the suburban development people of Santa Clara back in the old days, they made a really good choice by making Central Park a very prime location. And in fact, if I become mayor of Santa Clara, I want to start bringing more events to our Central Park, like maybe Silicon Valley Pride, or even some Pride events, or something that's going to make the community happy, and it being in Central Park. So Central Park is basically my favorite place to be in the community, just because of its location and just the environment.
Thank you for that. Well, we definitely have time for some audience questions. I think we only have one. Let me see here. I will read this, and Councilmember, you kind of answered this already, but I'll let you respond to this again. Julia O'Keefe writes, every ad for you is funded by the 49ers. How can you be independent if the 49ers fund you with huge amounts of money?
Well, it's funny because, people assume that you're in the pocket of somebody because what they do on one hand. No, I'm not in the pocket of that person. In fact, I've had a lot of pushback against the 49ers on a lot of issues. Actually, this last weekend, I went to the Elton John concert, which I did pay for my tickets. And it was a date night, just to let everybody know. And so we paid for our tickets. And when going there, we got dropped off at the Uber. And pulling up, I noticed there's a lot of problems, which was a backup along the Lafayette, where I feel that what we should do as a council is do a carve-in, so you have an area for a bunch of Uber drop-offs where you don't have a lot of backup. I know I've gotten pushback on that. I've gotten pushback from the 49ers on the San Tomas Creek Trail, or even a fee about, hey, why'd you guys raise your fee? I don't like that. Well, we can. And then we find out in the contract they can do that. So basically, this all comes down to the contract. If I side with what the contract states, like recently with NFL signage, it comes solely down to the stadium authority. That's the responsibility. I'm not in the 49ers pocket. People may assume that, but as I said before, give me 4 years to prove to you to be the mayor that Santa Clara needs. Give me 4 years to prove to you that I'm in the pocket of Santa Clarans and not the 49ers, because it's been pretty proven already too.
Another person is asking, why did Mr. Becker deny an endorsement of the POA? I assume that's the Police Officers Association.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the Police Officers Association, I think, asked a very inappropriate question. And the very inappropriate question was that I would take a pledge to protect the elected police chief. An issue coming up to talk about appointed there basically tells me that they wanted me to take a position on an item that hasn't even been discussed before the city council, that is unethical and that's irresponsible. And so I decided not to take that pledge. I decided to refuse their endorsement. And it makes me ask the question, did the mayor of Santa Clara, Lisa Gilmore, take a pledge before we decided on a specific item? And that basically shows predetermined bias, which is very, very concerning to me. But that's, And I feel that just what Pat Nicolai did, the chief, uh, interfering in this grand jury report and refer it to the district attorney. I think as Chief Nicolai is, I mentioned on more important crimes in this city, car break-ins, burglaries, and porch thefts. And I would even say that maybe the police chief should be looking into Burt Field, the commissioner who made a threat against me and other council members by comparing a recall to loading a gun. So those are, I think, are major issues that the department should be looking into, rather than worrying about me not supporting their pledge to protect a police chief, because we haven't even had the discussion yet.
Thank you for that. Going off of what you talked about with the grand jury, somebody actually asked a question about that. They said, what do you think about the grand jury's statement that 5 city council members have made decisions favorable to the 49ers?
That's an opinion. That's opinion. That's not fact. Just because they see a vote go a specific way. I mean, there's been other times where the votes were 4-3 or 6-1. I would really like a tally, or somebody to go out there and give me a tally of how many times Lisa Gilmore voted in favor with this on 49er decisions, and how many times it was 5-2, or how many times it was 4-3. I would like to see a lot of those, because the grand jury's report and statement was basically an opinion that we've made decisions favorable to the 49ers. But see, I think this is something that my opponent likes to do. She likes to take this and deflect it and basically put it on us of we're basically favoring decisions for the 49ers. No, it's not the 49ers trying to control votes on the council. It's not the 49ers trying to control what we do on the council. This is Lisa Gilmore trying to control the city council and their votes. This is Lisa Gilmore disappointed that she is in the minority by a 5-2 margin often, that she can't understand why she's on the losing end of votes. She was part of a voting bloc herself. She was on part of a voting bloc herself for 4 years, where she was in lockstep and made decisions favorable to either the related company, the POA, or anybody else. Nobody asked those questions. And in fact, you know, I think it's pretty sad that when we are basically taking a grand jury report and assuming that it is truth and that it is fact, when it says things like may have or could have, and even not even interviewing me, I think that's the biggest problem. So it comes down to, it's what Lisa Gilmore does not agree with. And I think that's the sad part, is that Lisa Gilmore is punishing people because they do not vote in line with her. It's not voting in line with the 49ers. It's voting in line with Lisa Gilmore. And that's why we continue to get accused of basically to the 49ers. And I ask people to go look at the record she actually voted on 49ers.
Thank you for that, Councilmember. This seems more like a question for Mayor Gilmore, but I think you could speak to this as well. Somebody asked, how can Mayor Gilmore be independent when she is funded by Related and the POA? Why is that okay and the 49ers is not?
I don't think it's, you know, well, let me read it again. How can Mayor Gilmore be independent when she is funded by Related and the POA? Why is it okay and the 49ers is not? Yeah, that's double standard. It's a double standard. And frankly, just recently, when the mayor wrote a letter to the governor asking for basically asking for a favor to their campaign donor through independent expenditures, that seems like a quid pro quo. That to me is a quid pro quo. So I find it a double standard that the mayor gets away with accusing all of us being in the 49ers pocket, and and she gets away with it being okay. That's not fair. And I think that the mayor should stand up for that, and the mayor should actually fess up that she was wrong. And I think it's basically, like I said, it's a double standard. Clear and simple.
Well, thank you for that, council member. So we're going to wrap up this portion with the mayor's race. Sure. I wish Mayor Gilmore could be here. She's not. That's unfortunate. Council member, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Audience, we're going to take a break until 6:45, and then we're going to pick up with District 2 with Councilman Raj Chahal. Mm-hmm. Take care, council member.
Thank you.
And we're back. Hello, everyone. I am moderator Nick Preciado, editor of San Jose Spotlight. We're here with our Santa Clara Candidate Forum. We're moving on to District 2 now. I'll be speaking in just a minute with Councilmember Raj Jahal. San Jose Spotlight crew, if you could please move him over to panelist view. Also, a reminder for audience members, we are accepting questions in the QA box. If you want to get those going now, we will have some time at the end of this section to get started with that. And here he is. Hello, council member.
Hi.
Great to see you.
Good evening, Nick.
Oh, thank you. So, council member, welcome. Let's do an opening statement first. You have 2 minutes for your opening remarks.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the arrangement by Spotlight to get the message out for different candidates. Really appreciate that. I'm Raj Jahal, and I have running for re-election for Santa Clara District 2. And one of the important things which I want to describe is my involvement with the community. Like, I'm not a newbie in the city council. I have been involved with the city for last more than years in one way or the other. I started with the International Exchange Commission, then Planning Commissioner for 5 years, then 4 years on the council, and also served on the various nonprofit boards like Mission City Community Fund, Friends of the Library Foundation, on those. So, and on top of that, because of my work since last 4 years, I'm the only candidate endorsed by almost every elected official, all the way top from Ro Khanna to Supervisor Susan Allenberg, Otto Lee, Bob Wykowski, Alex Lee, Evan Lowe, and 4 of my other colleagues. And I'm the only candidate who has been endorsed by the Santa Clara Democratic Party and Asian Pacific American Democratic Club. And also League of Conservation Voters have endorsed me for my keeping in view my track record of work. During my, what did I do during these 4 years? Like some of the achievements, I was a very much proponent of business license tax revision in the city of Santa Clara, which billion-dollar corporations are only paying $500 a year. And I've been asking for that since 2019. And finally, we have that thing on the ballot with the current council in place since 2020. We have been able to, so that will be able to generate $6 million to the city. And that's one of the achievements I think I really fought for, that we need to make a level playing field for all the businesses. And on top of that, since 2019, I've been asking for a free shuttle program in the city, just on the just like Mountain View has it. And we were in a minority. I was in a minority in 2019, 2020. But now, with the help of my council and colleagues, I have built a regional coalition with the help of to the free shuttle.
Councilmember, we're at time.
Okay, perfect. We can.
Thank you. So yes, let's move into the questions. Right. This has got a bit of a preface, so bear with me for a sec. So on the campaign trail, you've touted your approach for sustainable growth that maintains residents' quality of life and protects neighborhoods. But the city is far behind its affordable housing goals and needs revenue from commercial development. How can Santa Clara build more housing and strengthen its economy if it doesn't embrace density? So
my approach is smart, balanced growth. And we have, just to give you an answer for how do we achieve RHNA numbers and our affordable counting, we have more than 15,000 units upcoming into our north side, like Patrick Henry specific area plan. Kylie project is another one. Freedom Circle project is another one. Then a project in my district next to Costco is another one, where we have a 1,500 plus units coming up. And Tasman East area plan has 4,500 units already approved. We are adding 1,500 more on top of that. So if we include all those, like we are in the tune of 15 to 20,000 new housing units. And if we apply the 15% affordable component of that, you can think of more than 3,000 units will be coming up on that. And not only that, my idea is that instead of 15%, if we can, my second term idea to increase affordable housing is I would like to increase that 15% from 15 to 25%, if that is doable. And I know the cost of building has gone up, but at the same time, the rents have gone up, the cost of selling of each unit has gone in by leaps and bounds. So I think that will be payable and affordable, and it will pan out on the financial terms for all these developers. But that's what I want, that it has to be smart, balanced, and good growth where we can achieve all our RENA numbers and affordable numbers.
Thank you for that. If you win your council race and you can only do one thing in the first 100 days in office, what is it?
I think my focus is like we are in a deficit of $27 million, and money is everything. If we are deficit, we will not be able to achieve what we want to achieve. So first 100 days, if BLT passes, we will have some relief for $6 million. And I want to increase revenue. Like we have multi-billion-dollar assets within around us, basically, stadium. Like we need to increase revenue from the stadium. So what are the ways we can increase revenue? That would be my focus, that how we can increase revenue and bring the focus again on providing best of the quality of life services to the residents.
How can Santa Clara City Hall make it easier for businesses to open, grow, and thrive?
Actually, City of Santa Clara has been pretty good on that front. Like, you know, last time when I proposed BLT revision tax, there was a question raised, oh, businesses will go away from here, they will move to Austin or over there. No. Look at the top 10 businesses we have in the city. When in 2019, when I brought this forward, their market cap was around $500 billion. And when I presented the same number for the council to achieve the BLT revision, it was around $1.5 trillion. So they have grown. And I have my own business in City of Santa Clara. One great thing with City of Santa Clara provide all its businesses is 25 to 30% less on power rates. That itself, like I had my business in San Jose, we used to pay around $2,000 to $2,500 just for the power bill. Here, coming here, my power bill has gone to $1,500 or $1,200 or something. So that's saving itself. And just during COVID, I was very much proponent of approving $1.7 million for our small businesses for grant program. So those are the achievements what we need to provide our small businesses as well our bigger businesses so that we can grow our revenue from these businesses and give them a scope to grow.
Thank you for that. This is another question with a bit of a preface. So you, along with 4 of your colleagues, were recently named in a civil grand jury report, although you were not interviewed. The report raised concerns about lobbying in the city, notably with the 49ers. I'm curious to know what measures you would take to increase transparency and accountability at City Hall.
So first of all, I want to touch base about the grand jury. This is the first time in my historical evidence in US judicial system, somebody has been blamed and basically convicted without even listening to him. I have never heard of this thing. This thing is prevalent probably in third world countries. But this judicial system, what the report has shown, is basically a broken grand jury system. And as regards the transparency which we want to add, we have been very transparent. When in 2018, me and Karen Hardy, Councilmember Karen Hardy, won the election, we told our relationship with 49ers were one of the worst. Like we were not making any money since 2017. And we, on our election trail, we did say that we want to sit across the table with 49ers, although we were against Measure J, but the stadium $1 billion asset is here. We want to make some revenue for the resident. And we sat across with the table and we put it on our calendar. And, you know, the mayor said, oh, you're not putting the agenda on that. When was the mayor put any agenda when she had, and all her colleagues had meetings with related and previous developments? None of them. And now they said, oh, change the playing field. They should. We already started with that. And to answer other question about the transparency, this is my third election, 2016, 2018, 2022. I have not taken a single dime from any special interest. I have returned checks from special interest and PACs. I have returned those checks. Like recently, I just got a check from one of the PACs for $630. It's going back. I got leave of conservation voters endorsement, and I'm so thankful for my record. They gave me that, and they called that, hey, give me your home address. We want to send you a check. I told them, thank you so much for your endorsement. It means a lot to me, but you are a special interest, although very good special interest to take care of environment and Sierra Club, very good special interest, but as a policy matter, I will not take any special interest money. So I have not taken, and that's the reason. I'm very transparent, and I would be as transparent as I have been in the past. There's nothing to hide on my campaign, on my working also.
Thank you for that. Next month, voters in Santa Clara will consider updating the city's business tax to $45 per employee instead of $15. That'll be the first update to that in 30 years. Two-part question. Why do you support this measure, and how will you ensure that it doesn't harm local businesses and place the city at a disadvantage?
So I was one of the bigger proponents of that. As I said, I was asking for this thing since 2019. $45 per head employee, and with the business cap, with a cap of $350,000. So let me first touch base with the bigger corporations. I personally had meetings with Intel, AMD, NVIDIA team, and they were perfectly fine. They said, we are okay. We are not going anywhere. Once you bring this BLT, we have so much assets over here. There are billion-dollar assets over here. And if you look at from the different perspective, the cap of $350,000 is just a 1% salary of their one higher executive, basically. Do you think any business will go away from here just for 1% salary? That's a fallacy. Like, I know two of my colleagues are not supporting this thing, but I don't know why they are not supporting this thing. None of them, they said, we are not going anywhere. And on top of that, the Silicon Valley power itself saves them tons of money, like 25 to 30% saving on power itself from any adjoining city is a lot of money. As regard the smaller businesses, so when we proposed that, we initially wanted to have it progressive test, progressive per employee, but that was changed to $45 flat to keep it very simple. But at the same time, we have given the power to our executive finance director that if a small business cannot afford it, he has a full authority to write it off, and they will not be forced to pay that money about it. So with that, like, it's a very balanced approach. We were targeting around $10 million, but this one will give us around $6 million, which will add $5 million additional. We were making only less than $1 million. So it will be a good source of income, and especially when we are in deficit and we want to take care of quality of life of residents, it will be a good thing. And I'm very hopeful it will pass with a very huge margin.
Sticking with this theme of the city's deficit, what new revenue streams should the city pursue to address that large deficit?
So I think we have not been prudent in the past how the city's whole budget is being handled. Like, look at the scenario. We get around $30 million from Silicon Valley Power. If we don't get that, we were in a deficit of $57 million. And we have not looked at some of the efficiencies and our overheads in the past. Our city is one of the highest percentage of salary and benefit to the general fund. We spend 78% of our general fund on salary and benefits. That's one of the highest. We need to look at it why that is. We had one of the highest paid city manager in whole of California. I was the only council member who did not vote for her revision of her contract, basically when they added around $40,000 her housing allowance into perceivable amount. And I didn't vote for that. And we are the highest paying city for our top management, 3 or 4 top management. So we need to look at those things, like how we can take care of our spending And on the revenue part, like $1 billion asset, as I mentioned, since 2017, we did not make even a single dime from stadium. This would be the first year when we will be making maybe around $5+ million. We had 3 concerts, which we have accounting books on for. We made around 2.17 million. And I'm not sure Elton John's shows, 2 shows might give us more than 1 million each. So this is the first plan. So use of our assets, that is one thing, like how we can generate more revenue from these assets. That would be my focus on this. And other thing would be the grants available. Like I was able to get a grant of $8.5 million. Recently, we got an $11 million grant for our fire, hiring 3 or 4, that's a federal grant. So we need to focus on those grants wherever we can tap those. That will be another asset of increasing our revenue in a sense where we can use it for the city.
Thank you for that. Just a couple more questions. And before we get into those, I just want to remind the audience that we also have a few minutes at the end here for audience questions. So if you want to go ahead and put those in the QA box, please do so. I believe we're getting a couple new ones now. Council member, let's get back to our questions and then we can go to these audience ones. So the City Council last month voted to postpone a 106 unit affordable housing project on Civic Center Drive, and it's lagging behind on its affordable housing goals. What steps will you take to increase the city's low income housing stock?
So let me first clarify why we did it. Why we did postpone that basically. So in October of 2021, a group of citizens in our city came to council that this land should be used or converted to a city park. And this was a very park deficient area where this housing project is coming. And council majority did vote for that okay, we will bring this item back and we will explore what your demands are. Then we'll get you the answer whether we can convert that into park or not park or whatever. And when this thing was coming up, and this is in my district. When this thing came up, I had a meeting with my residents and they were very vocal. They said, how come our approval of this thing to be considered as a park has not been considered? Whether they deny it or accept it, that's a different issue. But why our issue of considering this thing is not brought forward? And it was a question of fairness and the moral and ethics which has been going through the council. If council agreed to something, it is our moral duty to bring that thing for the resident. Residents are the ultimate constituents who drive us as a council. So that was the reason it was postponed. Nobody at that meeting said that the housing, we are approving, not approving this housing project, but it was a fair question of fairness that we need to listen to the resident and we need to bring that forward. Coming back to the housing, as I mentioned earlier, out of the 15,000 to 20,000 units, we have a great opportunity to bring our affordable housing RENA numbers and affordable housing numbers pretty close to what a state wants us to basically. And I'm all for it. And as I mentioned, I will strive hard to increase the 15% affordability to 25%. And in one of our projects, when they tried to change the project, basically, instead of bringing hotel first and residences first due to COVID, we asked them for additional 5% housing and they gave it. So we were able to add, that's again in my district, we were able to add another 5%, 54 affordable units on that. And recently we had basically inaugurated 144 affordable units in my district. 65 units, other units are being under development right now in my district. So I'm all for affordable housing, which is a very dire consequences for our next generation. They need that help and everybody needs that help. And I'm all for affordable housing for that matter.
Thank you for that. What is your favorite place in Santa Clara and why?
I have been blessed that I had a great education as a kid. My family, my dad gave me great education. I'm a master's in physics, then MBA, finance and marketing. So I love education, and Santa Clara University is pretty close. It's alma mater of one of my elder sons too. And I go there and it's so well maintained, and it's a jewel. It's the first college in California. So that is one of my favorite place to go and visit. And on top of that, it has one of the missions at campus. So that's one of my favorite places to work.
Oh, thank you for that. Well, let's get into audience questions. Excuse me. I think we only have a couple right now. Let me see here. Council member, somebody is asking, and you touched on this earlier, but maybe we can clarify for listeners or viewers, I should say. How much money has Santa Clara gotten from Levi Stadium and the 49ers in the last few years? You were just talking about concerts recently and that revenue.
Okay. So I only touched the concerts. Just to give you an estimate, like nobody is touching the bigger aspect of stadium. 22-23 budget for stadium is $69+ million. Nobody know, like very few people knows about it. And when we started the stadium, and that's a 1 year revenue, $69 million. And we are talking about few million here, few million there. 69 million is the total 22-23 revenue. When we started the stadium in 2014, I think our debt on the stadium was $650 million. And we have been writing off our debt pretty fast. In 22-23, we are writing off debt out of that 69 million, $44 million is going towards writing off our debt. So that debt of 2014 from $650 million is at the end of 22-23 will be approximately $249 million. So there's a lot of revenue coming from stadium, but the agreements we signed, the waterfall agreement, they have to fill up some buckets first before that revenue flows to the general fund. So, and our litigation contingency was $10 million. I hope that will be reducing right now to some extent. So if you look at these, and $7 million we get from the Levi's naming rights. So total $69 million is a lot of money. And once we fulfill this debt of $249 million, maybe next 5 years or something, imagine that 44 million going to a debt will be flowing to our general fund. And on top of that, if we are able to bring more concerts the way we are bringing right now, that itself will be a pure profit and pure addition to our city general fund. It will be like if I foresee like to the tune of $40 to $50 million in next after 5 years, after we complete the debt and fill in those other buckets. And there's one more bucket, like we have to maintain a reserve fund of around $70 million to demolish the stadium at the end of its life, basically. So there are different buckets, but revenue is being generated, which nobody's talking about actually.
Thank you for your response. Another viewer, sorry, I keep wanting to say listener because I'm used to the podcast. Another viewer is asking, there's a bit of a preface to this. Why didn't you vote in favor of the city attorney explaining the recent 49ers settlement agreement from the city's point of view to Santa Clara citizens? Shouldn't November voters give great consideration to this matter in terms of council member performance? And how does that equate to transparency?
Can you, you broke up a little bit in between. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So it starts, it says, why didn't you vote in favor of the city attorney and staff explaining the recent 49ers settlement agreement from the city's point of view to Santa Clara citizens? Shouldn't November voters give great consideration to this matter in terms of council member performance? And how does this equate to transparency?
So, you know, as a council member, we have to abide by our city attorney office advice. And there were multiple lawsuits still pending with 49ers. And that's what we advise, that it is advisable not to bring this forward at this stage. And I'm all for that. I think they're putting this thing by December or something. So I'm all for transparency, and the agreement which has been signed has already been public. It's on the website, all the details. But discussion of that and other legal matters would have complicated things for settling the lawsuit. No city, no council member should ever be talking about the pending lawsuits in the open meetings. And that's I listened to the city attorney's advices, and that's the reason I think if anybody wants to talk about the agreement signed and it's a public document, we are all for it. But the scope they were talking about was much bigger than that.
Thank you for answering that. It looks like we have one more audience question here. It looks like it kind of relates to what I was talking about with Councilmember Becker not that long ago. Somebody is asking, does the mayor or any council member abuse you or your colleagues? Do you sense any racism or homophobia?
It's strange that in a minority majority city, I was the first minority to be on the council in almost 70 years history. And I don't want to say I became a councilman because I was a minority, but I devoted so much time into the community, and community respected my work for last so many years. And but there are always bad apples. During even my first campaign, like I got so many comments about it that go back, this and that. And I would want to highlight those because those are very smaller things. But at the same time, the community, like phobia in the community, since last 2 or 3 years, it's really, really bad. The tone of one particular blogger, what's being posted on that blog is horrendous. Like and that blogger, everybody knows who brought that blogger, what he's doing right now, basically. And if these people cannot condemn what he's doing, it's shame. It's shameful. And even on the city, I would not like to name, but there is a council member who will not even return greetings of the 5 council members, and who basically unfriended multiple family members of my family members from the Facebook. So that type of attitude does not help. It does not help at all. We make decisions. We may differ on the policy matters. But personally, after we make a vote, we are human beings. We should be sitting together and chatting together each other. I loved my days at a planning commission. We had very variety of different aspects, and we voted in different ways. Councilmember Search Chain, Councilmember Becker, we were all together on the planning commission. There were so many different aspects when we voted against each other different. We used to talk about it after the voting is done and respected each other's opinion, and we respected personally anyway, doesn't matter. And that's what I want. The difference of policy matter, difference of how we vote on a council should not be personal. There's nothing personal in this thing. We are here to serve the community. We are here to serve the community in the best way we can. And we have to maintain our dignity and demeanor so that we do this thing best for the community. And that's what I stand for. And that's what my wife told me when I first ran for the election, because our council was not so good at maintaining relations. She said, if you be, and I promised to her, no, decent, I'll always be other people. I will never do that. And I will never do that. I will respond to criticism on the dais, but I'll never be disrespectful to anyone on the council on that matter.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just to, I guess, tack on to that, how do you feel like you can bring a sense of decorum back to the city council? Because it does seem like these public meetings get heated, things are said, people get upset, the media, us included, cover these kind of things. What do you think can be done to bring or some civility, or at least cool things down a bit from the way that the situation has been going for, as you said, the last 3 or 4 years?
Right. I think one of the reasons, the council, there are only 7 people. There's 7 people only. We all need to sit together in a room and talk our differences. Let's talk our differences. If I've done something wrong with anybody feels that I said something wrong, let them frankly open, and I will be frank. Let's talk about it so that we can solve it. Discussion, communication is the key to solve not only businesses, but key to solve even at our household. If my kid did something wrong, let's sit together and find out. I may be wrong, and my kid may be wrong, or I may be wrong to a kid, but how do we solve it? We sit together, find out, communicate, and solve it. That's the key. Like that, I'm waiting for a day when 7 of us can sit together on a non-agenda item just to discuss this item, and everybody who think I am to be blamed for something, please be forthright, come out forward. If I will be first person to say sorry if I really made a mistake, and that can be one option. Let's bring this thing and sit in a room and come with a conclusion like adults and leaders, and don't show this thing in the public. That's, as a leaders, that's the last thing we should be doing in public.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Chahal. We're going to take a short intermission now, everybody, until about 7:30. We might be back at 7:25. So let's say 7:25, 7:30, we'll be reconvening. And Councilmember, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate that. And thank you again, Spotlight, for doing this thing. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, we are back. The final event of the evening. Hello, everyone. I am moderator Nick Preciado. For those of you just joining us, I'm editor with San Jose Spotlight. We're here doing our Santa Clara Candidate Forum. Up next is District 3. We've got incumbent council member Karen Hardy, as well as the challenger Christian Pilecchia. San Jose Spotlight crew, I believe that both of them are here. If you could please move them to panelists so that we can all see them on the screen. Let's see here. Let's give it just a sec. If possible, Councilmember Karen Hardy and Mr. Pilecchia, if you could please raise your hands in the attendee list. We are trying to find you. I think one person is raising their hand. We've got a lot of Josh Baruses. It looks like a lot of people signed in with a link, and now everybody is our co-founder. There's the council member. We're still looking for Mr. Pilecchia. Mr. Pilecchia, if you're here, please raise your hand in the chat. I think there you are. Hello, council member.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I think we're working on getting Mr. Pilecchia in here. Let's see. Well, it's good that we started a few minutes early. This gives us more time.
Not a problem.
Ah, there he is. I see him now. And here he comes. Hello, Mr. Pilecchia.
Hello.
Hey, good to see you.
Great to see you too.
Okay, so let me just go over some things because this format is what we originally intended, but with the other races, the challengers, and in one case, the incumbent didn't take part. So I'll give both of you a minute and a half for opening statements, and then we'll go into the questions. You'll each get 1 minute to respond, and you also get 3 rebuttals for this entire talk that we're having tonight. I just ask, because I'm asking the questions, I'm moderating things, and I'm also keeping time. I just ask that you please let me know if you want to rebuttal so that I can set the time. I will
do you want a hand raised or a virtual or what for a rebuttal?
A hand raise is fine, or even just once somebody stopped talking, if you just want to say, you know, I'd like to respond to that, that's enough. Okay. And I will also alternate the questions. So council member, we'll have you do your opening statement, and then Mr. Pilecchia, and then Mr. Pilecchia, you'll be the first one to answer the questions when we get into those. Okay, so council member, give me just a sec. Let me set the timer.
And you'll give me kind of a 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something?
Yeah, what I can do is I'll raise my hand about like 10 seconds or so that you have left, and then I'll do it again when you've run out of time.
All right.
Okay, super. Sounds good. Go ahead, council member.
Absolutely. My name is Karen Hardy, and I've been serving as the first directly elected council member from District 3. I really, really take this job very seriously, and I work very hard at it. I've been involved with Santa Clara in local politics since 1992 when I fought a card room. Then I served as a Historic and Landmarks Commission and then on the Planning Commission. I take my job very seriously, as I mentioned, and I work very hard at this. I feel like I have a really good pulse on my neighborhood, on my district, because I also work at Wilcox High School teaching math and computer science. Right now I'm serving as the chair of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. I'm on the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability because that is the group that makes certain all our public safety can talk to each other, because I'm also a ham radio operator. And then because my degree's in chemical engineering, I'm very interested in water. I am on the Silicon Valley, the Bosco is what we call it, but that is the Hetch-Hetchy system that the north side of our city gets water from. I'm also on the Silicon Valley, the Valley Water Board. And that's where the south part of our city gets their water. And then I serve on the water treatment plant advisory because that is where all our water goes, and we own 1/5 of that. And I think those things are important.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Plecchia, let me just reset the timer. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christian Pilecki, located here in Santa Clara. I live in Santa Clara. I work in Santa Clara. I also teach in Santa Clara. I started a workforce development program with the school district and in combination with the Chamber of Commerce. So I just came rushing back from that class to make this meeting. Thank you all for changing the time for me. I've been deeply involved in politics for quite a long time. I was the chairman of the board for the Sunnyvale Political Action Committee. I was a part of the Santa Clara Political Action Committee. I was a part of the San Jose Political Action Committee. I led government affairs for the city of Santa Cruz, and I was the economic development chair for the city of Scotts Valley. And all throughout the Santa Cruz Mountains, we worked on economic development to partner with all of the other cities over there. So I've been involved in politics for quite a long time. And I come to this debate with now a business executive and a lot of political experience that I think that I can bring to the city of Santa Clara.
Okay, thank you. Let's get into these questions. Mr. Pilecchia, you will be first. And just a reminder, these are a minute response. I'll do the same thing. Is the hand signal working for you guys? Raising my hand 10 seconds before? Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Pilecchia, what ideas do you have for addressing the city's looming $27 million budget deficit?
Well, it's a shame that we didn't pursue the lawsuit with the 49ers. That would have been more than have covered the $27 million. My philosophy has been this whole time, I'm not privy to all the details that the current city council members have, but I have a decent amount of knowledge with all of the workings that I did as chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to bridge the gap to what we are going to have in store for the city of Santa Clara. We have over $40 billion worth of projects coming into the city of Santa Clara, which is going to bring a ton of revenue, in particular sales tax and property tax. And now is not the time to be taxing our businesses to get us over this hump. Instead, I would like to utilize our reserves. We have plenty in reserves to get us to the next stage, the next couple of years, when all of these new developments will be bringing a ton of money into the city of Santa Clara.
Ooh, perfect timing. It was just about to go off. Councilmember, do you need me to repeat the question?
Go ahead, repeat it.
Sure. What ideas do you have for addressing the city's looming $27 million budget deficit?
I'm glad you asked because I've been working on all of this. Mr. Pilecchia responded to it, but that is Measure H, and we have not updated our business license tax since 1992. And even our really large businesses are only paying at a maximum $500. So what we did is we looked at a flat tax, and that's on the ballot for everyone. And that flat tax is $45 per employee per year. That works out to be 2.2 cents per hour per employee. That's not going to break anybody, but that's going to help because our city doubles the number of people in the city during the day. And so the reality is that puts a strain on our public safety and on our roads. And this is something that even the large companies have not pushed back on. Also, I was part of making certain we could do more concerts, and we got 6 very large concerts, and I'm excited about that. That'll help.
Thank you. And Mr. Pilecchia, yes, did you want to respond to that? I saw your hand go up. 30 seconds. Let me just get the timer ready. Okay, go ahead.
So it's a headcount tax, and no business in the world likes a headcount tax. It's the worst type of tax to do for growth for a city. And as chairman of the Chamber of the Commerce, we worked with the city staff to reduce it dramatically than what city council was actually asking for. They wanted a 700% increase in the business license tax. We reduced that by 60%. They wanted over $100 per employee. It got reduced down to 45, and that's what I was able to do outside of city council.
Thank you, Mr. Pelletier. Councilmember, you'd like to rebuttal as well?
I'd like to rebuttal the rebuttal.
Sure.
Because it was actually me that was working with the member of the Chamber of Commerce, who is their one employee. And it was me and Councilmember Park who said, let's do it as a flat tax, so it's not hurting any growth of any businesses. And you also have to recognize that it is going out to the voters. They will make their decision, and we are doing our very best. Our city pays 78% to our employees of our budget. Most cities only pay 70%. That needs to be fixed. I'm working on it.
Thank you, both of you. Next question, and I'm sorry, forgive me, it's been a long day. I believe, Councilmember, this is you going first.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, as Santa Clarans face a higher cost of living and skyrocketing housing costs, do you support enacting rent control in the city?
I've never said rent control is a good idea, because the reality is you are taking away the incentive for your owner to put money back in. If you look at places that have had rent control, they've had a lot of problems. We have most of the laws in California do focus on renters and making it very difficult to evict anyone. I know that because my sister-in-law was a manager here in California, in San Jose actually, for over 20 years. I don't think it's a good idea. I think building more options and having more options for people is the way to help with that.
Thank you. Mr. Pelletier, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So I grew up in New York City in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then in the early 80s, they implemented rent control there. It was devastating to the city. For the next few decades, New Yorkers will never ask for rent control again because they saw firsthand what it can do. It limits the upkeep of the property. So yeah, it might be a short fix in the immediate time, but over a decade or more, you won't have enough money coming into the facility in order for the upkeep, and so the property value will go down. And neighboring areas, property values will go down. So rent control is a terrible idea. It's something we do need more housing available for people, and that is what will drive the costs down.
Thank you. Next question. Sorry, let me scroll down just a bit. And Mr. Pelletier, you'll start with this one. There's a bit of a preface to this. So a dispute is unfolding about whether Related Companies, which is developing a massive $8 billion mixed-use project in the city, should pay prevailing wages to construction workers on the project. As San Jose Spotlight reported, Mayor Gilmore sent a letter to the governor asking him to intervene in a complaint from a painters union on this topic. As a council member, would you push them to pay livable wages on their development?
I would ask for livable wages on all across the board, not just particularly with this project. This is a matter that Related has to deal with the unions and the city, and I would not get in the way of their negotiations.
Thank you. Councilmember, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I know about this. The reality is the concern was Mayor Gilmore sent that letter asking the governor for something, making a request without telling the rest of the council. That was the biggest concern. Now, looking at the reality from a legal point of view, it looks like it is not a public, even though we own the land, it has been leased out to Related, and there may not be a legal reason to have to do that. Do I think it would be a good idea? Yes. But as far as a legal reality, they don't have to. And as far as we understand the legal reality today, but the concern was that the mayor should not have been petitioning to the governor in the name of the city without telling the rest of the council. we found out about it in the press.
Thank you. The next question, Councilmember Hardy. The relationship between the 49ers has disintegrated over the past few years, marked by bitter lawsuits and finger pointing. What immediate steps would you take to repair this relationship and end divisiveness on the council?
Well, I was part of the citizens group that fought against the stadium, fought against Measure J. I was on the board. I spent my time, my effort, my money to make certain. I wanted people to understand I didn't think the city owning a stadium was a good idea. I lost that fight. And as a council member, I have a fiduciary responsibility to look at the realities. And we looked at it and said, the only thing the city can make money on is really large A-listing events like concerts. And so they said the problem was they couldn't do it because of the mayor's music ban. So we gave them 5 waivers for 1 hour between Sunday to Thursday and said, make it work. And they booked 6 different concerts that we had 7 nights of extra activity. We would have lost 3 of those without those waivers. That's how I'm trying to repair it.
Mr. Palekia, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. Similar to before, I'm not privy to all the information, but I've been paying very close attention to this for the last 7 years. And, I would want to reassure the 49ers that I want them to make as much money as possible. I want the city to make as much money as possible. I want Santa Clara to be a destination spot. We need outside money coming in. It's one of the deficiencies we have as a city. We're not a destination spot. And so I would reassure them that I'm a businessman and I want to drive economic development into the city. And, review the contract and just make sure that everybody's abiding by the rules of the contract. And, and if there needs to be contract negotiations, I have a lot of experience in that as well.
Councilmember, I see you want a rebuttal.
Yeah, I will say that I was the one that wrote the resolution that the council passed to invite FIFA to come in 2026. So this is another way to drive that realities for the stadium and make it work in a good way. And that was me that did that. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, that's not technically a rebuttal. That was an add-on.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. I'm still going to count that as a rebuttal. So Mr. Palekia, you still have 2 rebuttals and Councilmember Hardy, you have 1 left. Mr. Palekia, I believe the question goes to you next. Sorry, let me get this here. Okay. If you win your council race and you can only do one thing in your first 100 days in office, what is it?
Well, the first thing we have to do is balance the budget. And I, again, will fight to make sure taxes stay low for small businesses. And we utilize the reserves that previous councils have so wisely put together for times like this. California is the most expensive state to live in, the most expensive state to build in, almost anywhere in the world. And so it's very difficult for businesses to conduct business. So even when you say, oh, it's only $45 per person, it's $45 per person on top of their sales tax, their property taxes, and all of the other expenses that we must incur from living in this great state. So balancing the budget is number 1, and then right after that, it's restoring our police and fire departments.
Thank you for that, Mr. Palekia. Councilmember, do you want me to repeat the question?
No. If I had a magic wand, there's a couple things I would love to do. But the reality is, if you see my backdrop, is I would love to solve some of our water situations. I'm working very hard to get what's called the potable reuse to be approved through the county, well, through the state. It's the State Water Board we're fighting with right now. And be able to close the loop on that water issue so we are not as dependent on rainfall and snowfall. And this is why being on the water boards as well as being on the water treatment plant is very important. Mr. Palekia keeps talking about the reserves. Maybe he missed the meeting where we had to approve that we took it from 25% of our budget down to 15, which anything lower than that would cause us real problems for our insurance. So there are no reserves. Those have been used, and that's not a possibility. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Council member, how can Santa Clara City Hall make it easier for businesses to open, grow, and thrive?
Well, first off, we thought we had hired someone to help with that, and very quickly it became clear that they had to be fired. There was misuse of funds. So we have not had a group to work on economic development, and this is one of the things I wanted to do. We obviously had a lot of problems during COVID that we had to focus on first, and we have made some positive changes in the city hierarchy, and some things now can be happening. In fact, we are working very hard and will soon have a new city manager and a new city attorney.
Thank you. Mr. Palecky, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So, similarly, we have to figure out a way to not tax our businesses, especially a headcount tax. A headcount tax is a deterrent for businesses to come into a city. Almost no business wants to come into a city that has a headcount tax. It inhibits growth. One of the major things that needs to be done in the city, but that I'm quite familiar with, is redoing or revitalizing our permit center. I spent a lot of time inside that permit center. A lot of the systems and processes are antiquated. And if we can, automate a lot of these processes or computerize a lot of these processes and lower the cost for small businesses, and maybe balance that out with some of the larger businesses, if we can, lower the cost, that would drive small businesses in here to incubate, to grow, and to create jobs for the city of Santa Clara.
Ooh, right on time. Okay.
I did ask for a rebuttal.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember, I missed that. Let me just mark that down.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Yes. Mr. Palecky keeps talking about this head tax and how negative that is. Maybe he doesn't realize we have over $15 minimum wage, and that for any business is just 3 hours of a minimum wage worker for them once a year. So this is not going to deter them. We have talked with the larger businesses. They're completely fine with this, and this is not a problem. You have to understand that that is a tiny amount, and you can compare it to other cities. We would actually be very close to the bottom.
Mr. Palecky, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, my opponent has never owned a business, never had to pay taxes of this amount, property taxes, sales taxes, and a variety of other expenses that businesses have to incur in one of the most expensive cities and one of the most expensive states in the world. And so, this is just adding on to what is already too much of a burden for businesses to bear. And if you can, and I guarantee if you ask any business in anywhere in the world, do they appreciate a headcount tax? Everyone will say no, because it inhibits growth.
Thank you. Oh, I thought I was muted. Thank you. Okay, we've got a couple more questions here, and then I think we might have time for a couple audience questions. So attendees, viewers, please feel free to put those in the QA while we do these last final questions. These are specific, one question to each of you, so I'm not allowing rebuttals. Councilmember, you've used all three of yours already, and Mr. Palecky, you only had one left. This question is for you. So, Mr. Palecky, you're a relative newcomer to politics and have never held elected office before. By comparison, who you're running against, Councilmember Hardy, has almost decades of political experience. Why did you decide to challenge Hardy, and what makes you qualified for this role? And you have a minute to respond, like usual.
I enjoy participating in politics. I've been participating in politics for decades. I've been chairman of the board of political action committees. I've always enjoyed being a part of politics without actually having to be a politician. I didn't want to run. I felt compelled to run. This city council is dysfunctional. We're the laughingstock of the Silicon Valley. We're the laughingstock, almost throughout the state now. The news is getting out that far. And so I feel compelled to run. I have the time, I have the energy, and I have the experience to bring some order to this chaos. This current city council has been nothing but destructive. And when you talk about budget shortcuts and budget shortfalls to be, we fired a city manager and then we hire another, we have to pay the city manager for a full year. And then while we hired this new one, we fired a city attorney, we had to hire a firm which is 3 times more than the other city attorney, and the other city attorney has a severance package too. It's absurd, it's chaotic.
Thank you, Mr. Palekia. Councilmember Hardy, you've been involved in city politics for several years. And I think recently, over the last few years, there's been a growing trend of people being upset with government, especially at the local level. There's been a lot more involvement. What would you tell voters why they should vote to keep you in office for somebody who might be looking for a fresh change?
Well, the reality is you have to understand how things work and how to get things done at the city. I learned a lot of that as a commissioner and how to work with the employees and understanding some of the differences in government versus private situations. This is one of the reasons I was so against the stadium and how they wanted to set it up, because private and public work very, very differently. And so I would tell them there's stability here, and there's some projects I've started. I mentioned one with water that I want to complete, and I want to make certain happen because I know how to make that work. I'll even mention they redid the one park in our district and forgot the benches, and I knew how to take care of that and who to get a hold of, and now there's benches. I know how to get things done.
Okay, thank you. We've got one last question and then we will go to audience questions. Councilmember, I'll ask you this. No time limit, just please keep it short. What is your favorite place in Santa Clara and why?
My favorite place? Well, if I want to go anywhere, it's usually Central Park, or I take my grandkids to Great America, which I did many, many times. I have a favorite restaurant. Of course, it's in my district. It's the Shack, and they have wonderful Mediterranean food. And of course, I'm always at the high school and helping out with things there. And then we have this amazing, and it's once again in my district, choco cookie place that makes, they're sinfully delicious. So I just enjoy being here in Santa Clara and having fun with all the different possibilities we have, both private and public.
Thank you. Mr. Palekia, same question to you. What is your favorite place in Santa Clara and why?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a foodie, so I do enjoy some of the great restaurants that have been popping up around here. Burke's is my regulars, Fleming's, I'm a steak guy. I enjoy, the nightlife that is starting to develop around here. I frequent Great America a lot. My company works there quite often, and we're trying to figure out ways to keep elements of Great America here. Again, to keep Santa Clara a destination spot, and I just came back from the adult school. Working, so I spend a lot of time at the adult school with local Santa Claraians, helping them find jobs. And so, like I said, I live, I work, and I teach here. My whole life is centered around Santa Clara. I've invested everything into it, and I really fell in love with the city, and I want to do my best for it.
Thank you, Mr. Palekia. Now, we've got a few minutes to get to some audience questions. Let me see here. Council member, I think that this is one that you can speak to. Mr. Palekia, okay. Mr. Palekia, I'll give you a chance to respond to this. I just don't know how much you'll be able to say. And we'll do a minute time limit just to make sure that we're moving these along. So, council member, the question is, will the 49ers pay the headcount tax?
All the businesses would have to do that, yes. If you're operating in Santa Clara, yes. That's easy. All businesses. And it's very minimal to just, it's called the pay to play, but all cities have done this. San Jose's is much higher. And Mountain View, who has one large and a bunch of tiny ones, they're just taxing Google up the wazoo. We wanted to make certain that we were not hurting any businesses as far as growing. That's why we did not put tiers in it, because that can be that can backfire and things. That's not a good idea.
Thank you. Mr. Palekia, do you have anything you wanted to say to that? I don't know, being in an unofficial capacity, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to say.
Yeah, well, I guess related to it, it's being an outsider of the city council, I was able to help reduce this headcount tax, and they wanted a cap of over $1 million. It's now down to $350,000. I still think that that's too high, but it's I was able to reduce it while I was outside. But I'm not against taxing. The taxes. I like my roads. I like my bridges. Taxes are an important part of life. So also while I was outside of city council, I got all the hoteliers to agree to increase the TOT tax. I mean, which is very rare. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, when nobody knew what was going to happen, I got hoteliers to agree to tax themselves. So again, when this pandemic, the effects of the pandemic start to go away, we will have more income coming in from these hoteliers, and you can thank me for it. My name was on.
Thank you, Mr. Palekia. Just a couple more questions here, and Mr. Palekia, you can answer first. We actually have two questions. I think you could probably answer both of these. The first is, how long have you lived in your district? And then, Mr. Palekia, there's a question specific to you that says, how long did you live in Scotts Valley?
I don't see how that's relevant to this forum. I've lived in a variety of all around. I lived in Santa Cruz. I lived in San Jose. I lived in Scotts Valley. I lived in Scotts Valley for, I think, 4 or 5 years. Again, I was part of the economic development. I was the chair of the economic development that tried to make the Santa Cruz Mountains a destination spot. We had, and taxing the businesses there with a BID, a business improvement district tax. And I got everybody to agree to it. And then, of course, as soon as it all started getting implemented, the pandemic occurred. I worked on that for years, about 6 or 7 years. It goes to show how effective I could be if I would have a city council seat. And so I lived in my district for 2.5 years now. Again, I moved here at the beginning of the pandemic. It was a luxury apartments. They were all empty, and they were going for absolutely nothing at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was an offer I couldn't refuse.
Thank you, Mr. Palekia. Council member, same question to you. How long?
You cut out a little bit, but I remember it was asking me how long I've lived here. I've lived in Santa Clara 37 years, and the area that is now District 3, I lived here 33 years.
Okay, short and sweet. Thank you so much. I think that is it. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any questions. No, I am not. So time for the outro. So that wraps up our Santa Clara County, our Santa Clara City Candidate Forum. Thank you again to our candidates, council members Anthony Becker, Raj Jahal, Karen Hardy, and candidate Christian Palekia. For viewers, a video of our today's forum, along with an article by our reporter, Jenna Cotta, who's here. Hi, Jenna. Will be available on our website, sanjosespotlight.com. That should be in the next day or two. And if you enjoy programming like this, please consider supporting our work with a donation of any amount. Thank you all and good night. And Councilmember and Mr. Palekia, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night, everybody.